So he comes to the area and the Holy Valley, and he sees the fountain. And the fountain isn't a fountain so much as it's a well. Now, this is one of those things that kind of happens, as I said before, that the stories get told and told and told and overtold and expanded. So this was just a well, and it was dug in a cave and lined with rocks. And he's like, okay, let's go check out the bottom of the well. So he goes down the bottom of the well, and when he gets down halfway down the well, he sees that the side of the wall is caved in, which means all he has to do is brick it up, seal it up, and the water will refill. Now, this is not that uncommon with wells. When you have different strata of rock, where you have some rock which is impermeable, which means water can't go through it, and you have other rock which is permeable, which means water can go through it. What happens is that you have this lower level of rock that can transport water trapped between two layers that can't transport water. So what happens is water rains way off there, and it forms a lake. And if the permeable layer of rock, the layer of rock that water can soak through, like a sponge, it's just like a sponge. Sandstone does it well. Limestone does it, except limestone tends to get eaten away by the water as it flows through. So if you have the sandstone or the limestone, and it's up against the bottom of a lake, then what happens is the water flows down from the lake through the rock. And as it's flowing down, it gets to this spot trapped underneath. And if you dig a well down, you can then haul up the water. And what happens is that with the pressure of the rock, it pushes the water up. So that water tends to seek its own level. So if you have a lake way far off in the distance and you dig down through the rock, the pressure of the lake will slowly push the water through and up through the well. Except what happened was it ran into another layer where it was permeable, where the rock wall failed. Perhaps there was limestone behind it. As I said, water eats away limestone. So you have caves. When you have natural caves, they're often cut in limestone by the water. So what happens is the water dissolves the limestone and eats it away. And at places where the limestone drips or water drips through the limestone, it forms these stalactites that come down because the water dissolves the limestone just like water dissolves salt, dissolves sugar. Doesn't dissolve it quite as fast, but it dissolves a little bit of the limestone. And that goes down, the water evaporates. So the water evaporates, leaving a little bit of the limestone behind. So you have these stalactites and stalagmites, and they come up and they join columns. And it can form beautiful structures because it's all shiny and crystally. But anyway, down in the well, and the wall gave way. And because the wall gave way, the water flowed out through there. And it's going down probably miles and miles away to somebody else's well. So what he has to do is he has to go and patch up the walls of the well. So that shouldn't be a big task. Maybe he's going to bring in concrete. And anyway, in this valley, they had a monastery and a nunnery. And so the guys stayed with the monks and the girls stayed with the nuns because, the boys stay with the boys and the girls stay with the girls. And anyway, so they each stayed in their own thing. And after he was done, the next day, after he was done looking at the well, he bumped into Sandy, and Sandy had been talking to the Hermits. And he used a few phrases that she didn't know. And honestly, in the 150 years that's passed since this was written, I have no idea what keep hotel means. Though a hostel is kind of like a hotel, so there's that. I know what the words mean. I don't know what they mean together. So anyway, Sandy didn't understand what he was saying because he was using modern jargon and slang more. So he was using slang. And she was using this big, beautiful, flowery speech. And, it's overly cumbersome. Now, one of Mark Twain's famous quotes, one of the things that he's known for saying, we just passed right by it, talking about the literary German. who you won't see until he emerges on the far side of the Atlantic with the verb in his mouth. Now, German does a weird thing where if you have a main verb in a sentence, it goes to the end. So if you said, I would have liked to go swimming on Sunday, it would be, ich wollen am Samstag schwimmen. So it's, I would on Sunday swam. It's, as I said, the verb goes to the end of the sentence. And the thing is that you can have these long, cumbersome sentences where it's like, yes, last Tuesday, blah, blah, blah. And I wanted, or I desired, and I had. And all of that information kind of gets lost because it's like, I want, I did, I will, I would. And it's like, you did, wanted, would, what? Swim. Jump rope. And whatever, whatever the verb is, it ends up going to the end of the sentence. And so there's a joke that I've told your dad before and he loves. So, and the story is about a translator. So here you have this translator and a German diplomat. And the German diplomat, blah, 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 blah. And the translator's just kind of standing there. And the diplomat's chattering on. The translator's just kind of standing there. Diplomat's going on. Finally, the translator turns to him, says, "The verb, man! Where's the verb?" Because the verb comes at the end of the sentence. But in English, in other languages, you need to get the verb up there closer to the beginning. So, it's like, I want to swim on Sunday. And it's like, I want on Sunday with my friends and my family after supper to very carefully and precisely swim. So if you have this long, and this is like, I went to swim Sunday with my friends in a clean and careful manner. But it's in German because, it's like, okay, I want, and then it's like, who knows? So it's the verb slides to the end of the sentence. So that's a little bit of, that's a famous Mark Twain quote in there. But so he went to go see the Hermits. Now, Hermits are a thing that aren't really a thing anymore. But what it was you would have people who would separate themselves from society. And they would separate themselves from society. And they would spend their time in prayer and fasting and meditation, and they often were unclean and whatever. And it was like being homeless, except being respected for being homeless. So here you had these people, and a number of them probably had mental illness, and they would take up, and they would live in the woods, or they would live in a cave, and they would just do whatever. And if you had a local lord, often it was tradition that the lord would have a hermit, and he would be proud of his hermit, and he would show off his hermit, which is, it's kind of disturbing to display people like they're animals in a zoo, but that's what was done. And in exchange for this, the lord who had the land would provide food and a little shelter for the hermit, enough to keep him dirty and disgusting and entertaining. So, this is one of those terrible things that they did back in the day that, you got to treat everybody with respect, no matter how humble. Treat everybody nicely, treat everybody like they're a real person, like they have feelings, even if they seem insane, even if you don't agree with them. Remember that everyone is a person and that everyone has feelings. So that is probably the important takeaway from this. There is, he mentioned in the book, The Lives of the Saints, there is a book like that, and it goes through all the different saints, and some of these stories are just too wild to be believed. And as he said, the things that in there, like the person who is covered head to toe in mud, and that's it. That is tame for the stories of some of these saints and some of these hermits, because, as I said, if you had the Lord and the Lord had the hermit and he was showing him off, he would actually go and say, "Oh, write this down about how great my hermit is." So it's really kind of sad. And the one guy who was bowing and bending and turning constantly. And the boss was like, "Hey, I could hook an engine up to this in a sewing machine." And he went and he sold these shirts for this insane amount of money. It's like 50 cows worth. So here he was, 50 cows for this shirt. Oh, because it's holy and made by a hermit and it's all special and will keep you safe. So, once again, the boss is doing some horrible things here. And even worse, he noticed that the hermit was having a problem with his leg and wasn't, working as well. It's like, "Hey, friends, I have this great deal. I want to cut you in on it." So here he is. He's conning his friends because he knows the hermit isn't going to be long for this world. And it's like, "Okay, I'll sell you my hermit business. Look, it's made me all of this money. I'll sell it to you." So he conned his friends because he knew that the business was going to shut down on its own no matter what. And he's like, "Okay, I'll sell now." So, terrible, terrible person. But you know what? Even though the boss is a terrible person, he has some feelings too.